Welcome everyone. I'm delighted to invite Arshia Sattar to give the colloquium talk this afternoon. As I was coming up the stairs in the elevator, it struck me that it's been 5 years since she gave the colloquium talk here. She had just published Rama's Anguish, Lost Loves, exploring Rama's anguish at that time. She's now just published a book titled Ramayana for Children. She's worked in the Ramayana for a long time. She's a writer and translator. She's translated Katha Sarita Sagara, Somadeva's book, and also a book called The Mouse Merchant, stories about the economy and money from ancient India, which is interesting. She's also the founder-director of a writer's residency program based in Bangalore called Sangam House. Her talk today is titled, Mummy, if Rama loved her, why did he send her to the forest? This is Arshia.
Thank you, Chandan. Thank you for having me here. Thank you all for coming. One of the many gifts that I've received from APU is the friendship and intellectual companionship of many of your teachers, not least among whom is Chandan, Vanamala, Purnendu, Narayan. So it's, when I come here, I have a sense of, like I belong. I'm not an outsider, So how much time do I have? 40. Okay. I'm going to talk today about what it means to write for children, but I should actually be less arrogant and say what it meant for me to write for children. People write for children for many different reasons, often with many different agendas, so I'm going to tell you about mine. 20 years ago, in 1996, Penguin published my translation of the Valmiki Ramayana. And I think it's sort of almost to the day. It came out in November 1996, and now it's October 2016, and I'm writing the same book for children. So what I thought I'd do to start is just read you a little bit of how the children's book sounds. Now, this is a brand new book, so I don't know where anything is. I've never read from it before. I've even forgotten what it sounds like, because you write something and then it goes away, and then something, you don't see it, and some funny looking proofs come back, and you're in a panic because you think you've missed all the typos, so you don't actually read the book until it comes to you in book form, and then you read it and you're like, oh God, what is this? Did I write it? But apparently I did. So this is the moment of the exile. They've just gone into the forest. Sita was exhausted, but she put on a brave face as she prepared for her first night outside the city. She recalled that she knew the earth. The earth was her mother and would protect her in the days to come. The earth would provide her with food and with a warm bed, even with flowers for her hair. And then something. In the morning, the princes went down to the river to worship the sun, bathe, and perform the morning rituals. It was a clear day. A soft breeze blew and carried the fragrance of unfamiliar wildflowers to Sita as she awoke from a dreamless sleep. Since they had carried little with them, it was an easy departure. And for Sita's sake, Rama knew that their journey into the distant forest must be slow and in stages. So he was pleased to spend some time with the sages and their wives, all of whom treated gentle Sita as if she were their daughter. They gave her new clothes and washed her hair and rubbed her feet with herbal oils. They taught her how to use what the earth offered so generously. Despite his wife's delight at being with the sages' wives, Rama knew that they had to keep moving. And then they go a little further. Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita thanked the sages for their kindness and generosity. They set off, going further from Ayodhya, from the palace and their families and their kingdom. They walked easily, stopping to eat and rest by murmuring streams and in whistling groves of fruit-laden trees. Sita pointed out flowers and creepers and birds along the path to her husband, but it was Lakshmana who held them back when he saw a snake sunning itself on the rocks by the side of the path. At night, they slept, warm in their bed of leaves and dried moss in the shelter of trees with wide canopies, watching the stars and listening to the night birds. Sometimes it was possible to forget that they were in exile, banished from the people they loved, and that 14 long years away from home stretched ahead of them. And then I want to read sorry, I really don't know this book. All right, so Ravana goes to Maricha and says, you have to help me, and of course Maricha is his uncle. So he says, Maricha, I look after you. You cannot refuse me anything. I'm going to abduct this beautiful Sita, and I have a plan that involves you. Turn yourself into a golden deer and draw Rama deep into the forest, and I will carry his wife away. Sita will be mine. I have to return to kill Rama and if I have to return to kill Rama and his brother, I shall. What do I have to worry about these weak and powerless human beings? Ah, Ravana, do not make an enemy of Rama, begged Maricha. He is not a human like the others. He's special. The gods love him. Your enmity with him could be the end of the Rakshasas, the end of your great kingdom, the end of you even. Go back to your pleasure gardens and your women, Ravana. Let Sita be. Let Rama be. Listen to my words. You coward, shouted Ravana. Come on, climb into Pushpaka. I have no time to waste and no interest in your ridiculous fears. If the gods loved Rama, would he be in exile in the forest? A homeless wanderer, sleeping on leaves and eating roots and shoots, dragging his wife and his brother behind him? So the reason I read those two passages is because, you have to recreate characters that people already know, the children possibly already know. And one way, of course, one way of creating a character is to create a voice for the character. So I wanted Ravana to be, what he is, arrogant and sort of self-involved, and there's another part that I really like, which I won't read, where people, when Hanuman sets the city on fire, and all his Rakshasas come to him, and they say, there's a monkey who set the city on fire, and he's like, monkey? Monkey has come to Lanka? You expect me to be afraid of a monkey? Are you a donkey? Because children love the word donkey, monkey, and we all know monkey, donkey, elephant, cow, So you really have to not regress, you have to go backwards in your head to remember the things that made you laugh when you were 10. Anyway, so, Mummy, if Rama loved Sita so much, why did he send her into the forest, is the name of the presentation. We concern ourselves with what children's literature will teach its young readers. This question is foregrounded when a text like the Ramayana, so significant to both Hindu religion and culture, is being presented to children. We ask ourselves what children can learn from a story in which the central character is the ideal man, if not God himself. And we also ask ourselves what they should learn from such a story. Will they learn something different from the lessons that adults absorb? Will they understand the story in the same way that we do? Having just written the story of Rama for children, these are questions that I have had to confront. What have I learned from the Ramayana, and do I want to share these lessons with those younger than myself? And more importantly, do I want to share those lessons in this book? I believe that the Ramayana tells a story that speaks at all times and in all places and to all people. One could live in Alaska or Tierra del Fuego or Papua New Guinea and still be engaged with the Ramayana. On one level, it's a simple story about a righteous prince who is exiled into the forest because of his stepmother's insecurity. In the forest, his wife is abducted by a demon, and he must fight a war to win her back with the help of his magical animal allies. It's obvious the children will be immediately attracted to this seeming fairy tale of princes and princesses and flying monkeys and 10-headed villains. But the Ramayana is also a story about a good man who is constantly challenged by circumstances, who is asked to make the most difficult choices that will affect his father and mother, his brothers, his wife, his allies, and his enemies. Whatever he does in the story, even when he is motivated by the most noble part of himself, his actions are criticized because their consequences are not always easy to digest. For example, the killing of Vali and the banishment of Sita. Children will see this narrative tension in the story. They know Rama is a good man who does what he believes to be right, and sometimes things become more difficult instead of easier as a result of what he has done. Children will recognize the sterling virtues of honor and respect in the way Rama behaves towards his father and his subjects, but they will wonder how his actions affect his beloved wife. And if Rama was right in obeying his father's command to leave for the forest, why did he not stop to think that by doing so, by going to the forest, he was breaking his mother's heart? And there's a beautiful moment in Valmiki Ramayana where Kaushalya says, but what about me? What about your dharma towards me? Yeah, how come you're listening to your father? And what will happen to me when you go away? I've waited for this moment all my life. Dasharatha never loved me. People in the palace have gossiped about me. I was waiting for the moment when you would be king. And so she's not just sad, she's really angry that he's going away. Okay, how does one balance conflicting responsibilities and obligations? Children will see the love and loyalty between brothers in the story of Rama and his siblings, but they will notice that the relationship between the monkey brothers, Vali and Sugriva, is far more complicated. There is much that children will notice on their own and think about in their own ways. That is important because the Ramayana is multi-layered and multi-valent. What adults gain from the story, the importance of dharma, for example, will come to children later. Like us, they too will grow up with this tale. As they grow, the story will remain the same, but they will change and see the characters and events in the light of their own experiences. As children, they are likely to be sad that Sita is banished into the forest, as your daughter is. But as young men and women, they might seek to question why Rama was compelled to exile her from his kingdom. I feel sure that children will react to the same things that we do, but they will express their sadness and their joy in a different emotional and intellectual vocabulary. To my mind, it would be a great injustice to teach children lessons from the Ramayana. We diminish the story when we do so, believing that the story has only one set of meanings and one set of lessons, and those, of course, are the ones that we know. Perhaps children don't need to be taught overt lessons in the stories they read and they hear. Stories teach more through examples than they do through a moral voice. We can believe that children are perfectly capable of parsing ethical dilemmas, seeing what is good and right, understanding what is difficult and problematic, and that they can do this on their own. We expect a story that adults consider didactic to be full of moral lessons for those who are younger than we are. In fact, I think that Ramayana carries many sets of lessons. Some of them are for children and some of them are for older people. And this is all predicated on the fact that, of course children don't read for pleasure, only adults read for pleasure, right? Children read because they have to be taught something. No, children must read for pleasure. Pleasure is a good thing. Pleasure also teaches you things. The one thing that I was very sure of when I started the children's book was that I would not compromise on the story. I knew that I had to work with a smaller vocabulary of words, but I was sure that I was not going to work with a smaller vocabulary of ideas. In that sense, I had to be very sure about what it was that I wanted to say before I started writing, especially with a story that so many children already know. I also knew that I had to be entirely honest. If I loved something in the story, it had to show. If there was something in the story that bothered me, that also had to show. Children have a real radar for falsehood, and they'll respond to falsehood. So rather than pussyfoot around incidents or issues in the story, I felt it was better to present them as plainly as I could and let children make up their own minds about what to think. So what I kept as a guideline when I was writing was actually very simple: no lies. So recently, as part of the publicity for this new book, which is all over the place and it's a bit embarrassing, it's never happened to me before, getting so much attention for a book that I've written. But anyway, my publisher, who's a woman who doesn't take no for an answer, I don't think she knows the meaning of the word, she thought it would be a great idea if I was interviewed by a 10-year-old boy. I suppose that nothing and no one could be less like a 56-year-old woman than a 10-year-old boy. Fair enough, yeah? So we met before the video interview, and it didn't go well, right? He wouldn't look at me. I was like, oh, God, what am I going to do with this kid? I hate wise-ass children. Oh, he's a brat. Yeah, it really, really wasn't going well, right? Anyway, so then the shoot is at my house, and this kid, poor boy, he's told that, oh, it'll be from 3 to 6. Rubbish. From 1 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, that's how long it went on. He wasn't well. He had a cold, and, I was just like, when is this ever going to be over? So, and I was trying to write an article. I had to finish, we were not connecting. Yeah, it was not happening. And if you see the interview, you'd never believe that. Anyway, so when the interview formally began, we were both a bit draggy and distracted. I asked the standard questions. What did you like about the book? What did you not like? What would you like to change? All this, right? Anyway, it was not fun. But what became fun was this boy's responses, because he said the one thing that he would change in the book was Sita's banishment. He did not want her to be sent to the forest when she was pregnant. Amazing. Two poles of the gender spectrum. The relatively naive 10-year-old boy and the battle-hardened 56-year-old feminist would have trouble with exactly the same thing. It made me even more sure that children know what makes them uncomfortable. We don't need to say, look, darling, here's a tough part. What do you think? When you're reading to them, or they are reading themselves, they are the ones more likely to ask the tough questions. Mummy, why did Rama send Sita to the forest if he loved her? And when they ask that question, you better be ready with an answer. I was talking to one of your teachers, and she was saying that it's really hard to read the story of Ramayana with her daughter, yeah, because they have the same questions, really. So whether you're 9 or you're, 29, it's the same problem. So the little boy, the same little boy, stumped me once more in this 15-minute interview. He asked me why Rama got fooled by the golden deer if he was God. So I stammered and I stuttered and I said, well, maybe he forgot for a moment that he was God. Maybe he knew there was a Rakshasa inside the deer, and so he wanted to kill the Rakshasa. And then I thought, okay, this is a really difficult question. So I said to him, what do you think Rama got fooled by the golden deer? And he looked right back at me and he said, because he loved her. He loved his wife and he wanted to make her happy. Okay. 30 years, yeah, I've been with this text. 30 years I've been studying Ramayana. This never occurred to me as a reason for why Rama would chase the golden deer. And so it is, the children will respond in the way that they do, albeit within their own emotional, intellectual, and linguistic vocabulary. But they respond with an astounding clarity. We respond too, but with the multiple expressive vocabularies that we have at our disposal. Children's responses are fundamentally the same as ours, even if they are articulated in very different ways. So one of the reviews that I got recently, it was in Scroll, scroll.in, and the reviewer said that I'd left out all the sour and kept all the sweet because I wanted to show Rama in a favorable light. Yeah, and of course everybody hates a bad review. This wasn't a bad review. Huh? It was an okay review. And I was like, what? Did she just read the book that I wrote, or did she read some other book? I didn't want to make Rama look good. I didn't think I had made him look good. But her point is, she says that among other things, I left out the part in the Shurpanakha episode where Rama glosses over Lakshmana's marital status. And that sort of makes the episode less powerful. And that I also excised the part where Sita accuses Lakshmana of desiring her when he refuses to go after Rama, right? Because Lakshmana says, no, I can't leave you and go. Rama's told me to stay, and she tries all kinds of things, and finally she says to him, I know you want your brother to die so you can have me, right? And that is to Lakshmana, of course, a horrible, horrible insult, and he's like, you know what, if this is what you think, I'm just going to go. So I left that part out, right? It's in the book. I'm not making this up. So I just want to read you the Shurpanakha episode and the golden deer, yeah, from, all right, sorry. Okay. So, Sita was not the only one admiring Rama at that moment. Hidden in the trees nearby stood a Rakshasi. Her name was Shurpanakha, and she too gazed at Rama with love in her eyes. She noticed his strong arms, his broad shoulders, and his powerful chest, his long, firm legs. She was dazzled by his clear forehead, his bright eyes shaped like the petals of a lotus, his eyebrows dark as a crow's wing. Shurpanakha had never seen such an attractive man before, and because she was a Rakshasi who lived freely and by her own rules in the forest, she decided that she wanted him for herself. She burst through the trees and bounded up to where Rama sat with his wife and brother. All at once it seemed as if the sun had been swallowed by a dark cloud. The breeze dropped and there was a great hush in the air. My name is Shurpanakha, and this forest is my playground. I go wherever I want and I do whatever I please. I want you to be mine, she said in her harsh voice. I don't care who you are or where you've come from. Rama looked at Shurpanakha completely unperturbed. He took in her vast size, her gaping mouth filled with large teeth, her rough hair that hung down on either side of her face, her drooping belly, and her sharp yellow nails. Shurpanakha. Calmly, he told her who he was and why he was in the forest. Come away with me, she begged, and held out her massive arms to him. I'm in love with you. But I'm a married man, replied Rama, standing protectively in front of Sita, who was shaking like a leaf in a storm. If you want a companion, why don't you ask my brother Lakshmana? He's available at the moment. This is not the time to be mischievous, Rama, shouted Lakshmana, his sword already in his hand. This woman is dangerous. Look at her. She's a wild thing from the forest. All right, so and the golden deer part, oh well, anyway. So you get the point that I think I did make the the allusion to Lakshmana's married status. And of course, you know, the fact is that in Valmiki, we don't know anything about him being, whether he's married or not, right? It's the later Ramayanas that, so I thought, you know, I should just put it in there, but perhaps not loudly enough for this reviewer to have noticed. The reviewer's objection is one worth raising. What do we leave out when we write for children? Or how do we make things simpler? Do we soften the blows that the Ramayana rains upon our adult hearts and minds? I left out some things because I left out some of the things that I believe younger children may not understand, like explicit sexual violence or expressed sexual desire in these episodes. Younger readers, or younger listeners in some cases, receive the Ramayana in the way that I've chosen to tell it, essentially as a fairy tale. But within this kind of storytelling, they're exposed to the fact that men have power over women. They can kidnap them and hold them captive. They can ask them to prove that they have been chaste and then later throw them out of their homes and hearts. These tropes and themes occur outside the Ramayana as well, in stories from across the world that our children will read. This, to me, is sufficient to make children aware, however dimly, of patriarchy, of misogyny, and of the harsh truth that women and men are not equal. My 10-year-old inquisitor had a strong sense that there was something very wrong about Sita being sent away. As he grows older, he will inevitably encounter more explicit conversations about sexual violence and patriarchy. I have no doubt that he will, at that moment, remember what he read in his Ramayana for children. And being a sensitive person, I hope he remains a sensitive person, he will put two and two together. He will then refer to this incident by the name that it deserves. He will also read other Ramayanas, I hope, realizing that what he read as a child was age-appropriate, but not necessarily complete in terms of its emotional landscape. The point of writing for children is to write for children. It really is that simple. Children know that as well. They know that they are reading books that they will understand. Adults read different books, books that are meant for them. Children read children's books, which are meant, and kids get this. Oh, that book has got no pictures. Oh, the print is so small. Why is it so fat? These seem like sort of trivial observations, but what they're actually expressing in their childlike universe is, this is not a book for me, right? Why do we always think that children are unidimensional and that they have flat landscapes? No, they don't. They're saying a very big thing by saying, this is not a book for me. As we recreate characters from an essentially adult world and a fundamentally adult story, we have to make those characters accessible to children. One of the ways in which we can do that is to make them humorous. With Hanuman, it's easy. Children are prepared to laugh at a monkey, and there is enough in Hanuman's Ramayana exploits in which he displays his monkey nature, his kapitvam. But what do we do with more threatening characters like Ravana when we are dealing with a generation of parents who are concerned about othering and demonizing the other? Yeah, I had an interviewer ask me this question, and again I was just like, really? You want me to answer a question about othering when I'm talking about a Ramayana for children? And that's why actually the 10-year-old boy was great, because he was so direct, right? But anyway, it's good. Every question, whether it comes from a 10-year-old or from, politically correct interviewer, every question makes you think about what it is that you've done, and maybe you haven't thought about it before. So every question in that sense is a good question. So how do we negotiate, when we're worried about othering and demonizing? How do we negotiate a contemporary social and racial politics into a story that is predicated on the basic otherness of the Rakshasas and of Ravana in particular, Ravana most particularly in his opposition to Rama? I think we don't negotiate these social and racial contemporary political categories. When children read the Ramayana, what they know is that Ravana is the bad guy in this story because of what he does to Sita, and because he fights with Rama, who is the good guy in this story. Yeah, kids have understood that Ravana is the bad guy. The othering of people and races, the idea of irreconcilable differences, comes from outside the story. It comes from us, from parents, teachers, and society. The kid is just going to say, Ravana is a bad guy, right? But somebody's going, oh, Rakshasas are all bad, that's us, that's not the child. There's another problem also, how when we're dealing with a story that's ready-made, some parents are against the idea of their children being frightened, fear being an emotion that disempowers. But as children, we all enjoyed the shiver of healthy story fear, the rippling of the hair on our arms when we thought there was a knocking on the window at night, when we noticed that the shadows on the wall were opening their cavernous mouths to swallow us whole. If we closed our eyes, the shadows disappeared. If we closed our ears, the knocking on the window ceased. And if we hid under the blankets, why? We were safer than we had ever been. Because how wonderful it is with the child, no? When you can't see anything, you're invisible. Yeah? You play hide and seek with kids, they'll go hide under the blanket, and like, I can see you. And it's like, no, but I can't see you. Yeah? So, when we're invisible, we are, of course, completely secure. My first memory of fear is that Ravana would come and carry me away in his 20 massive arms. 20 was very important, I remember that, because I was 5, and I could count up to 20, right? So the number, if you had 10 arms or you had 30 would have been impossible, right? 10 would have been not enough, because I can count to 20. My world at the time, as a 5-year-old, was filled with magic, of talking monkeys and 10-headed demons and princesses with hair so long a grown man could use it to climb a high tower, of sad young girls who knitted sweaters so that their brothers would turn from being swans back into the princes that they were. There were dwarves that could spin straw into gold. There were pumpkins that turned into carriages. There were mirrors that told the truth. There were mermaids who grew human legs by drinking magic potions. My world was full of possibilities. The lines that adults drew between reality and fantasy were not lines that I could see, nor did I want to see them. It was thrilling to know that magic, a break in what I was told as this is how things are, a break in this is how things are, was just around the corner. And if this break in the normal, the usual, the boring also had held the chance of fear, I was willing to take that chance. So the question that most people have been asking me is, why did you write a Ramayana for children? And it's like, well, why not? You know, it's like Everest. Why did you climb it? Because it's there. It's a quote attributed to Mallory. It's probably apocryphal, but anyway. So the simple answer is, why not? But there is another simple answer, which is that typically children don't know Valmiki's version of the story, and it has been my pleasure and my great privilege to tell it to them. Yeah, Valmiki, of course, is the first Ramayana, right? The Sanskrit one. So when I was translating, the adult Valmiki Ramayana 20 years ago, people would say, "What do you do?" And I would say, I translate Ramayana. Conversation stoppers, like, okay, now what do we do with this one, right? But sometimes, they would say, Ramayana, you're translating Valmiki Ramayana. Why are you translating? We all know the story. I was like, okay. And also my friends, when the book was published, very sweet. They all bought it and all like that. And it's 20 years later now. I waited 20 years to sort of be able to make this observation. When I see the book in their bookshelves, it's unopened. Yeah, sometimes the pages are still stuck to each other. I was like, Hari, you haven't read my Ramayana, then why should I read? I know the story. And I was like, okay, right? If I'd written a novel, even if it were a terrible novel, they would have all read it, right? And they would have given it to their friends. But Ramayana, no, I have to have because my friend translated it. But read it, who could be bothered, right? So, this thing of you're translating Valmiki Ramayana is obviously not about Ramayana. The question is about me. Why are you translating Valmiki Ramayana? But anyway, so my answer to the ostensibly Ramayana question is the same now as it was then. Why do I tell the Valmiki story? Well, because it's the first Rama story that we have. It's the only classical Rama story we have in which Rama finds out that he is God at the same time that we do, rather than acting as God and being treated as God by those around him right from the outset. Our children, whether they hear Rama's story from our parents or from watching TV, or from reading comic books, almost always hear a Ramayana in which Rama is divine, an avatara of Vishnu, come to earth to restore and uphold dharma. One of the reasons we tell our children the story of a divine Rama and not Valmiki's version is because, as a matter of fact, we don't know Valmiki's version either. When I was translating Valmiki, every now and then for a lark or for party conversation, I would ask people to tell me a story from Valmiki that they claim they knew. Yeah, the text that they know. Every single time they would tell me a story that was not in Valmiki's version. They would tell me about Lakshman Rekha, they would tell me about Hanuman's son from a fish, they would tell me about, the encounter with Kalanemi. None of these, Shabari, the incident, none of these are in Valmiki Ramayana. So very often we assume that Kamban, Tulsi, Kritibasa all translated Valmiki into their language. So the text that we know in Bangla or Tamil or Kannada or whatever is necessarily Valmiki's Ramayana. Yeah, we believe that the text that we read in our own language is a translation of Valmiki. But that is not the case because each Rama story is unique and special. Usually, we know the Ramayana that is closest to us in language and culture. So North Indians know Tulsi, and Tamil people know Kamban, and Bangla people know Kritibasa. And in that sense, Sanskrit is a language that no longer belongs to anyone. So that could be the reason why we don't know the Sanskrit version of Rama's story. Sanskrit is also far away in space and time. It's a hard language to learn. So unless we have other reasons for knowing Sanskrit, very few people, apart from scholars, will bother to access the Sanskrit text. And yet for me, it is the Valmiki version that is the most interesting. It is here that we see the tradition rather than a single historical author grappling with the idea of God coming to earth in the form of a man. What does that mean? How does he act? How do people around him act? Is he always right? What if this God-man or man-God is a king, not an animal like Narasimha, or Varaha, or a part man, or a mixed caste outsider man like Parashurama? What implications does this king's actions have for a larger culture? Perhaps the reason we ignore Valmiki's version is also because we don't want to grapple with these questions. It's so much easier to tell and be told and perpetuate a story in which this is sorted out. The idea of Rama's divinity is sorted out. So the reason we perpetuate the Bhakti Ramayanas with our children is because we haven't quite sorted out what to do with Rama's actions as a man and let alone as a god. I think that one of the reasons that the Ramayana continues to live with us 2,500 years later is because we're still figuring it out. The Valmiki Ramayana itself is troubled by what Vali does. You remember Valmiki Ramayana is troubled by what Rama does. Yeah, remember Vali's critique when he shoots Vali from the back when Vali is fighting Sugriva and Vali is dying, and he says, "What are you doing? You are the great Rama. I did not expect this of you. You are an upholder of dharma." And Rama's response is really quite trite. He says, "What do you know? You're a monkey." Right? And Vali's like, "Yeah, so you're not supposed to kill me at all because you cannot eat my flesh. I'm a four-toed animal." He has all these reasons why even as a monkey, he should not be killed. And Rama basically says, "Well, what do you know of dharma?" So it's a fairly, one of the problematic moments in Valmiki. But this critique, the kind of critique that Vali offers, all but disappears in the later Ramayanas. Vali, Kabanda, Viradha, even Ravana are all grateful to be killed by Rama because they attain moksha by dying at the hands of God. But to a child's question about right and wrong, when the child says, "Why did he do this?" we're going to say, "Kanna, Rama is God. He knows what he's doing and it is for the best." Or we can say, he thinks he's God, so he does whatever he wants, right? But now go to sleep, you'll think about this in the morning, right? These are not bedtime questions, yeah? You're supposed to it's okay, tomorrow, yeah? So now this same little boy who's become my new hero, obviously, or certainly the hero of all my interviews and all my papers, the same young inquisitor asked me how long it took to write this book, right? And at first I said, "Oh yeah, it took me about 6 months." But then I realized that in fact it had taken me 30 years, yeah, to write the children's book. 30 years of living with and studying Valmiki Ramayana finally gave me the confidence to make my own version, and that too, a version of the Ramayana for children. Somewhere inside me, finally, I felt that I had earned the right to tell the story my way. A children's version has been actively on my mind for about 5 years, mainly because I couldn't find one in English that I liked. I couldn't find a version that left a child with questions rather than, gave the child all the answers. But it took me more than 5 years, much more than 5 years, to suggest to my editor that I'd like to, and my publisher, that I'd like to do a children's version. And the reason for that, the reason why it took me so long, because I didn't know what to do with the idea of God, right? So when I say, other people, they're scared, they don't know how to figure it out, I'm one of the other people too. I didn't know how to negotiate this idea of God, Rama as God, for a child. So, I really spent a lot of time thinking about it. I didn't want to start the book with, Rama as God. I thought that would be like, it wasn't the book that I wanted to write. And then finally, it came to me like a bolt of lightning. I'm going to do exactly what Valmiki does, which is tell at the end of the story, right, that Rama is God. And so we find out that Rama is God, we as readers, at the same time as Rama does. And I'm going to read that. First, I'll read it from the adult version. Okay, so this is at the Agni Pariksha at the end of the war. It's in Yuddhakanda. And Sita, of course, has asked Lakshmana to build a fire so she can go into it because Rama has cast aspersions on her chastity. Right? Suddenly, Kubera, Yama, Indra, Varuna, Shiva, and Brahma, creator of the worlds and the knower of the Vedas, arrived in Lanka with their chariots, which were as bright as the sun. They raised their strong arms that were adorned with jewels, and they addressed Rama, who stood in front of them with his palms joined. "You are the creator of the worlds and the foremost of the wise. How could you let Sita walk into the fire? Don't you know that you are the greatest among the gods?" Long ago, you were Rittadhama, the best of the Vasus. Then you were the self-born Prajapati, the creator of the three worlds. Then you were the eighth Rudra and the fifth Panchama. The Ashwins are your ears, the sun and the moon are your eyes. You are visible in the time between the end and the beginning of the worlds. And yet, you have humiliated Sita as if you were an ordinary man. Rama, the Lord of the worlds, the best among those who practice dharma, said, I always thought I was human, that I was Rama, the son of Dasharatha. Tell me who I am. Where did I come from? Why am I here? And this is what I do in the children's version, which is also right at the end, excuse me, after the Agni Pariksha. Here we are. Rama built a fire for Sita, who bowed to the gods and said, If I have never thought of anyone but Rama, if I am speaking the truth, let fire, the eternal witness, protect me. With her mind calm and her spirit serene, Sita stepped into the flames. Even as the monkeys and bears began to wail, the gods, Brahma and Shiva and Indra and Varuna and all the others, came down from the sky in their bright chariots and surrounded the fire. Rama bowed to all the gods that stood before him, and Brahma said, You are the greatest of the gods, Rama. How could you let Sita walk into the fire like that? You are the creator of the worlds. You are the sun and the moon. You are time and everything else. How could you humiliate Sita as if you were an ordinary man? I know myself only as Rama, the son of Dasharatha, stammered Rama. Tell me who I am. Tell me who I am. Why am I here? What is my purpose? And Brahma spoke again. You are Vishnu, you are Narayana, you are the holder of the conch. Yeah? So that I decided just to copy Valmiki. Because, Valmiki's story is obviously so great. It's been around for 2,500 years, and we're all retelling it, whether it's, Kamman or Tulsi or me or Ashok Banker or Amish, or, we're all indebted to Valmiki. I believe that I stayed true to my own understanding of the God problem in Valmiki's text. Rama finds out that he is God when the gods rescue Sita from the fire and return her to him. Another reason to acquaint young readers with the Valmiki version of the Ramayana is that so they become gently and more or less naturally aware of the fact that there are many Ramayanas, that the Ramayana itself is comprised by a pluralistic and diverse tradition. Perhaps we will give our children a chance of thinking through the politics that divide and exclude, that say mine and not yours, instead of embracing ours. I hope that younger readers of my version of the Ramayana will read other versions, if not now as children, then certainly when they are older. If children already know the story, it would be fantastic if they were to ask, but why is there no Lakshman Rekha? An informed parent would be able to say why this episode is missing. A different kind of parent would blame the teller of the tale. That's me. That person didn't tell properly. It's there. She just forgot. Or she didn't know. So it came as a huge shock to me some years ago when I was watching a documentary by Shikha Sen called Anek Ramayanas about parents doing a Ram Leela performance for their children in one of these very sort of highly alternative schools in Delhi, right? And the film is actually quite funny because the parents start fighting because they don't know that there are many Ramayanas, right? And one guy says, no. Which Ramayana did you? You don't know Ramayana. No. So they're accusing each other of not knowing the Ramayana. Instead, what is actually happening is that each set of parents knows their Ramayana only too well, right? And so then there's this, and people walk out of the parents and say, no, I cannot participate in a Ramayana that behaves like this, right? Then some other lady says, no, I don't want to be Kaikeyi, my mother-in-law will think very badly. It's an amazing film, right? And you should see it one day. So while we know that there are many Ramayanas, we often forget that there are people who don't know this. There are some people who are outraged when they're presented with the idea of many Ramayanas, but surely there are many people out there who would be excited by the prospect of hundreds of versions of this beloved story. So in conclusion, speaking of informed parents and concerned parents and politically correct parents, all of whom are very good things, they're good parents, I sometimes think that we transfer the responsibilities that we have as adults onto children's literature, asking the literature to do what is too complex and too difficult for us. We ask literature for children to teach morals, values, ethics, even aesthetics. I firmly believe that the job of children's literature is to open the young readers' imaginations, to make them believe that other worlds are possible, if not real. By doing so, literature empowers our children to think about changing the world that they live in, making it a better place for everyone and every person, whether it is a talking being or a mermaid or swan or a dwarf. I have no doubt that when we believe that the primary task of children's literature is to free their imaginations, children will learn the most important lesson of all, which is how to live with grace and with respect for all beings in our world. Thank you. Sure.
Since nobody's asking, I have a question, Arshia. Arshia, even if Rama's divinity waits until the end to become revealed to himself and to the listener, is there a structure of piety that you notice through the text?
No, not in Valmiki at all. But very, very much in Tulsi. Tulsi is entirely steeped in the rasa of bhakti, which is the 10th rasa, and it's very, very pious. But Valmiki doesn't have that. Valmiki has many more emotions in it. And so I've tried to stay with that because I didn't want to write a religious text, because I want the book to be read by all kinds of children, not just Hindu children. And if you have a Hindu piety penetrating the text, then it might alienate Muslims, Christians, Americans, I don't know. And I didn't want, like I said, I think it's a really universal story. And it's universal in its essence. And then we layer it with all kinds of things, and it becomes a Hindu text. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. It was a great talk. And I have not read the Valmiki Ramayana, and I'm sorry. And some of the things that you mentioned was very surprising. So my question is about this. Since you mentioned that it's very pluralistic and there are many versions of it, how did you go about it when you did this 20 years ago? Where did you start? Did you learn Sanskrit?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
And so just can you speak a little bit about your journey into this the core of Ramayana?
See, like every other Indian child, I heard it when I was very little, and that's why I remember being frightened. I was really, really frightened. I remember this thing very clearly about the 20 arms and, being able to count that. And, really, like everybody else, most of us hear it as a child, and then we go away from the story, or the story goes away from us. And then much later, when I was in graduate school in America, I got interested in mythology, and I wanted to study Hindu myths. And I got excited by Hanuman. It's like, really like being 5 years old again, So in a sense, my relationship with the Ramayana is that of a 5-year-old. So in order, because I was working on Hanuman for my PhD, the university that I was at, you have to work in the original language. You can't work in translation. So I had to learn Sanskrit just to be able to read Ramayana. And I don't read anything else in Sanskrit. So I always, people say, oh, you're a Sanskrit scholar. I say, no. I can only read Ramayana. I can't read anything else. So that. But when I was studying Valmiki, I looked at all other Ramayanas, obviously in translation. The Tulsi one I could read with help in Hindi, but nothing really excited me as much as the Valmiki one, because really it's the only one in which we don't know if he's God and he doesn't know if he's God, right? And that to me makes for a very interesting set of questions and existential, dilemmas. If he's God, he's God. So narratively, that's not interesting to me, because it closes off the questions. But obviously, in terms of devotion, it is the most important thing. But if I'm not coming from that space, then it doesn't speak to me. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we keep saying that as an Indian child, I heard Ramayana. But honestly, as an Indian kid, I was never told Ramayana, and nobody told me the story. So do you think that the Ramayana has more importance, like as we are progressing, into a generation? Maybe if I have kids, I might not read Ramayana to them as an epic. It might just be like a story, a version I know.
Right.
Might not know the details of one specific Ramayana. It will be mixed.
Right.
So do you think Ramayana is a story only, or is it a little bit more than that?
It's what you want it to be. I think that's the beauty of the Ramayana, that if you want it to be a story, it can be. But if you want it to be a devotional text, it can be. If you want it to be an epic, it can be. If you want it to be a fairy tale, it can be. I think that's why it is such a brilliant text. But I'm more interested in the earlier part of your question that, as we get more metropolitan, or as we get more globalized, or we lose touch with our own languages, or what we think of as our cultural roots, are we actually going to lose Ramayana? I think probably we are going to lose it as a story, which is why you must all go and buy my book just now, so that we don't lose it as a story. Buy the big book and the small book, yeah? But I don't think we're ever going to lose it as a religious text, yeah? Because I think religious texts have a way of getting very firmly rooted in a culture, and of course also in the last 20, 30 years, certainly the sort of expanse of your young lives, the Ramayana has been politicized. It has become the central text of a particularly aggressive brand of Hinduism. So they're not going to let that one go. I mean, they fought really hard to get it. They're not going to give it up. So I think it's up to us to remind people that it's a text that is also something other than a religious text. Yeah.
I wanted to follow up on what you just said. If you think of how you wrote the Ramayana 20 years ago,
Yeah.
was before Babri Masjid?
Just after.
Just after.
Yeah.
And now, when,
Yeah.
as you say, it's become so much more politicized, were you writing it differently? Because there's multiple things, that you're trying to make out of the Ramayana.
Well, the biggest difference is that I'm 20 years older. And that's huge. I think at 56, I can't say I'm fearless. I wish I could say I'm fearless, but I've lost a lot of my fears. At 36, you think, oh, somebody will come and kill me, they'll break my house. No, now I think you want to come, I'll give you my address. It's like that. So I think I wrote with a greater, oh, wow. I think I wrote with a greater innocence in 96, even though it was right after Babri Masjid. I started translating, it took me 2 years, 2.5 years, so it was right after Babri Masjid, which is also why, all these conversations were, you are translating Ramayana, meaning who are you, right? Because I don't have the appropriate name, apparently. So those questions came very much out of that immediate political situation. And now, in a sense, things are so much worse than they were at Babri Masjid time, because a sort of majoritarian stance has become naturalized, And now, in a strange way, I feel it's a more political Ramayana, because I've been very determined to tell the story like it is, and to tell it without fear, is what you're going to do, really. Yeah. Wow, that's a hard question. Yeah, but thank you for asking, because I think I should figure this out, yeah.
Just to,
Yes.
because so many things have solidified. Part of it is the majority, and so this sort of the one way of seeing it. And there are subtler things. I was just talking to my daughter before coming here about, following up on your question, is Ravana bad or all asuras bad?
Yeah,
she was asking
exactly.
me this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she said Ravana is not an asura because she also has the Amar Chitrakatha that talks about Ravana and him as a Shiva Bhakt.
Yes, yes.
She said he's not an asura.
Yeah.
I said, well, Vibhishana is not an asura, but Shurpanakha is an asura. I said,
Yeah.
why? Because she has claws.
Yes, see? Yeah.
But it's also there's a standard way now of depicting them.
Yeah.
And
And I think in that sense, the othering, the biggest sort of contribution to othering has been by Amar Chitrakatha, because Rakshasas are dark skin, the big muchis, they're really ugly. And we are, that's where we absorb these things, especially when we're so young. So, and that's what I mean also, that we expect children's literature to do the hard work that we as parents and adults should be doing. We need to be confronting these things, rather than saying, okay, I'll tell you tomorrow, or ask Dadi, just, yeah. Not a single man is asking me a question. This is amazing. Oh, thank you, gentlemen. Yeah. Just when I was beginning to think women do rule the world.
Yeah.
Okay, challenge.
Have you encountered with the questions from children from different religion, let's say Islam and Christianity, and what kind of questions they asked?
This book has just come out. It only came out last week, So I haven't really had. But that's a very interesting question. Why did they send a Hindu child to this little boy that I'm talking about, who I'm so fascinated by? This is it. Nobody thinks, right? Nobody, they think a child, okay, what do they care whether the child is Hindu or Muslim or male or female? But if they really wanted to ask an interesting set of questions, maybe they should have asked a little Muslim girl, or, I'm going to point that out to them. Thank you very much for raising that question. I'm doing a reading in Pune, and I imagine, I know there's one in Bangalore later in November for children. But I feel I'd really like to know, I'd really like to have an answer for you, but I just cannot ask the question, how many of you are Hindus? It's a very weird question. And so you play tricks like, what is your name? Acha, your name is Rizwan, what do you think? Those are cheap tricks, but I'm really trying to get at the question that you're asking, but I cannot say how many of you in this room are Hindu, yeah. But I'm going to try and find out. I'm going to, it's funny, on Facebook, this book is getting a lot of traction on Facebook, and lots of my feminist friends are writing and saying, oh, I'm so glad that finally you've written a Ramayana, because I won't be embarrassed to show it to my children, right? And a lot of Muslim friends are writing and saying, I'm going to give this to my family. And I'm thinking, acha, Musalman is giving Ramayana to his or her family. That's going to be interesting. So there is some, people are sort of skirting around the question that you're asking as well. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your very interesting talk. I have two comments, not really questions as such. Firstly, at many points during your talk, I sensed in your approach to writing for children some kind of recognition that has also come to us from empirical child psychology, which basically is stop treating the child as absolutely unformed and empty, to be filled by Oedipal connections or interactions, so on and so forth. And you yourself, I think at different points during your talk today, brought out that element of respecting that the child is something, is someone who will go in different directions with, coming entirely internally, will go in different directions with interactions. And I found that very interesting, and being a bit theoretically oriented, I'm curious to see what one can make of that in a larger vein. How does one think of the agency, subjectivity, or the individuality of the child? Any further comments would be great on that. The second, and here I'm worried I might be digressing a bit from the focus of your talk today, but you ended on a note which seemed to suggest that you yourself within the Ramayana have recognized some strains of non-anthropocentric thinking where the human-animal divide breaks down, and in a way Ram is the interlocutor through which those conversations get played out, right? And I'm just very, very curious to listen to more from you on that specific point, both in relation to what that means for children growing up today and what that means for adults as well.
Thank you very much. It's not like I came to writing. Well, of course I did. I mean, when I decided that I was going to write the Ramayana for children, I was very sure that I was not going to talk down to them. And I was also very sure that they know how to understand stories. We may no longer know how to understand stories, but I think a child really does know what a story is, yeah? And we leave them behind very quickly, and so we forget what it means to read a story. So that, for sure, this idea that, they are able to make narrative judgments, right? Like they know that Ravana is a bad guy in the story, but they don't like this little girl Dhwani who got it very sorted out that, this one is an asura and that one is not an asura. That's coming from somewhere else, right? And the business about, being Ramayana being non-anthropocentric, I think all the stories that we read as children are non-anthropocentric. If you think of Panchatantra, which some of us knew as Aesop's fables, when Hans Christian Andersen, I mean, the line between the human and the animal world is so blurred. And the fact that, I hate this new word, shape-shifting, because it comes out of a very specific universe of writing and thinking and image making. Shape-shifting is not a writer's word, it's a artist's word, and it's a visual, it's a movie maker's word. But the fact that you can be an animal at some point and really you've been cursed or you're under a spell, and then you can be, you can be transformed. So I don't think that the non-anthropocentric thing is specific to Ramayana. I think it is quite specific to a world of folk tales. When you think of Grimm, or you think even of our own folk tales, we don't have to really leave our cultural shores, but I think it's very important that we do leave our cultural shores, that we must know that in Grimm's fairy tale also there are people who are sometimes animal and sometimes human, and we must know that the story of Ramayana resembles the story of Helen of Troy or Shrek. Why do we have to stay with the classics, right? That we cannot believe that this is our exclusive property, not as adults. There's something that we're going to hand over to children, certainly not as Indians, as something we're going to hand to the world, and certainly not as Hindus, that we're going to share if we feel like with people from other religions. So I think that's the point, rather than Ramayana. It is that, and then I do believe that if we leave children's literature free, right, then children are going to see this. It's just because we load it up with these messages and these ideas, and it's like, no, if you just leave them alone, they're going to look at kids, they talk to their pets as though they're expecting a response. All of us think that our dolls get up at night and, have a party inside the cupboard, and, those are the things that are encouraged by children's literature, and those are the things that we must help children maintain, especially having lost them so completely ourselves. So.
I had a question, a translator's question.
Yes.
This is not just removed in time, in language. It's a language like English. How did you try to retain the aesthetic charge of the original in terms of form?
Well, I cheated. I copied. No, what I did was because I can't believe that. I mean, I can say things like I feel so close to this text that I feel that I've internalized its images completely. So when I want to say something, it comes out in Valmiki language. But so I wanted to keep the images or the metaphors tropical. You know, not South Asian necessarily or Hindu necessarily, but dark as a crow's wing, eyes like the shape a lotus petal, trembling like a leaf in a storm. These are all Valmiki pictures, and I just wanted to keep them because I think it locates the text without actually saying, you know, there was once a kingdom of Kosala, it is in northern India, it is in the Gangetic plain. I didn't want to do that. But in some other way, the story needs to be located. It becomes more real. I mean, you know, you have to be able to help people see. And it's quite interesting. In Valmiki, there are almost no physical descriptions of Rama and Sita. And so this business of what Shurpanakha saw, you know, she's this broad chest, blah, blah. I took them from different bits in Valmiki, and at that point, I really felt, oh God, we have to know why she's so attracted to Rama, so I better describe him, you know? So that there are narrative compulsions that you respond to instinctively, you know, and it's only now when I'm having to think about it that I realize what happened when I was making that description. So yeah. Yeah, the local images are... It's also an homage in a way, you know, to Valmiki, because when I was writing this paper, actually, I realized that, you know, people claim not to know Valmiki, and many people don't, but he is the one who started this Rama trip that we're still on, you know. Everybody somehow... well, if Valmiki hadn't given us the story, you know, he invented Hanuman. I mean, that to me is truly amazing, to be able to create a character like Hanuman who flies and speaks Sanskrit and is funny and wise and brave and loyal and reckless all at the same time. So, yeah. There's one thing though, I'll just show you the Hanuman here. She's chosen the langur, my illustrator, not my illustrator, the illustrator of this book. She's chosen the langur figure. And there's another picture I'll show you, if I can find it. This is Hanuman, Jambavan telling Hanuman his birth story, right? And there's a graphic novel called Simeon, which is also obviously about Hanuman. And there too, the monkey that the young man has chosen is the langur. And of course, we all know that when we see Hanuman is that funny brown monkey, you know. But illustrators like the langur because I think of the contrast between the black face and the white fur, and is so much more elegant, you know, with the long tail and the long limbs, and also because the langur looks like an old man, you know. So the wisdom that we attribute to Hanuman is already contained within that face. So that I found really interesting that she would. And it also, I have another book called Adventures with Hanuman, which is illustrated by a different writer, and the story has a very different feel to it. And she's chosen this regular brown monkey, right? So I think that when she chooses the brown monkey image, we're already supposed to laugh at it, right? But when you see a langur image for Hanuman, you're like, "Arey, ye to koi hai," you know. You treat the character differently just because of the visual presentation. So.
Silent quarters. Any decisions you regret, Arshia, in terms of writerly
My
decisions?
life?
No, it's about the book.
I haven't got close enough to the book yet to realize what I did wrong. But with the big Valmiki, my great regret is not doing more Uttarakanda. in the translation itself. But now I have another book, so it's good that I didn't do it then. But this book I really need to, I haven't read it. I mean, this is the first time these two passages that I read, I was like, yeah. Not yet, but I'm sure there will be things that I regret leaving out, yeah.
5 more minutes. The undergraduate students. Do you have a question for the audience, Arshia?
How many? No, I'm not going to ask your question. Where's that gentleman who asked about? No, that's really not the question. I was being silly. Yeah, how many people actually like the story of Ramayana? In whatever way you've heard it. Everybody likes Ramayana. Oh, that's amazing. Apart from, yes, but, yeah. And how many people like Mahabharata? Okay, which do you like more? Who likes Ramayana more than Mahabharata? Yeah, like 3 people, and me, yeah. No, that's, I mean, when I started to work on Ramayana, I was in my mid-20s, and everybody was working on Mahabharata, right? And so it was the 1980s, and people were just like, "Ew, I can't believe you work on Ramayana," and all that. And I was also like, "Oh God, I'm working on the easy text," which it's much harder, right? I mean, the Sanskrit is incredibly harder. But everybody was like, "Oh, it's so simple, it tells such a simple story. Look at Mahabharata, it's got so much complexity, everybody has got so many shades, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then they say, "And you're working on the monkey?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, so, and now, I mean, all these years later, I mean, I really have become quite a devotee of the Ramayana, not in a religious sense, but in a literary sense, because in Mahabharata, that there are problems, right? The dharma is sukshma. They tell you that right off the bat. They're always talking about dharma endlessly, and they're always doing the wrong thing. Right? They think, and then they do the wrong thing, right? And it's like, why did you spend so much time thinking? You bored me, right? But in Ramayana, I think, the Mahabharata has so much moral ambiguity, and, it's so difficult to know what is right, and yeah, fair enough. But I think, for me, why Ramayana is actually much harder to deal with, and it's also a much more profound text, because everybody in Ramayana does the right thing. And it still goes wrong, yeah? So what do you do then when you act from the best part of yourself and you hurt the people that you love best? That to me is really, really the challenge of being human. That to me expresses the human condition far more poignantly than this idea of like, well, I don't know what is right and what is wrong, yeah? In Ramayana, everybody knows what is right. Everybody does the right thing, but it just doesn't work out. And that to me is a life lesson, that we can always say, well, I did what I thought was right, but then why is the world such a bad place, So in that sense, I think that Ramayana is much, much more profound than Mahabharata. I made my pitch for my text, yeah.
Thanks, Arshia.
Thank you, Chandan. And of course, I just realized this whole thing is recorded. Just this minute, I was like, oh God, okay. Too late now. Yeah.